Serial killers who got caught for dumb mistakes. GG's. Yeah, I'm gonna
Not
eat
every
your
killer
butthole
is
sarcasm.
caught by genius detectives. Some criminals get caught because they mess up in ways that make no sense.
Yo, I did that.
So dumb, you can't believe they actually happened. Today we're looking at
If you guys were to commit a crime, what crime would it be? Allegedly.
who got caught for dumb mistakes. As usual,
And
we'll
don't
go
say
from
tax fraud. That
shocking
one's like
cases
easy.
to those that are just insane. So my goal
Allegedly,
is
sorry.
2.5
Sarcasm.
million
What
subscribers
crime
by the
would
end
you
of
commit?
2026. Can we actually do it? I don't know, but you know, we gotta dream big. So it would mean the world if you subscribe, and I will do my very best to make the best videos I possibly can for you. I'm Visual Venture and you are awesome.
Yes. Oh,
Dennis
you don't want to
Nielsen.
incriminate yourself, do
This
you?
criminal was caught because he didn't understand how toilets worked. His name was Dennis Nielsen. For years,
What?
he was one of Britain's most dangerous criminals. Then one careless mistake in the bathroom exposed everything. Dennis grew up in Scotland in the 1940s.
Did he flush a
became
corpse down a
completely
body?
normal. But when Dennis was 6, his grandfather passed away. They were very close and loss broke him. He began to develop a fear of abandonment.
Nielsen started to have a fear that he could be abandoned by anybody at any time.
That fear followed him into adulthood. Dennis became withdrawn and antisocial.
It was said that Dennis was just like in his bed and he would just read newspapers and keep to himself.
He had other personal issues, but he didn't open up to anyone. That isolation slowly changed him.
put
By
my
the late
gla- I put my
1970s,
glasses on.
Dennis was unstable and having violent thoughts. In December 1978, Dennis went to a bar near his home. He met a young man named Steven. They
Violent
talked for a while, and
thoughts.
Steven followed Dennis back to his flat. When it was time for Steven to leave, Dennis felt the same fear he battled all his life, the fear of abandonment.
Dennis was more worried.
So he's like, he's like one of those crazy people. You can't leave me if you're dead. And he has like
Like he
spirits
couldn't bear
following
another
him
day
and shit.
alone.
That panic consumed him. In a moment of madness, Dennis ended Steven. It was his twisted way of making sure Steven would never leave him. Then came the next problem. What to do
I
about
was
it.
right.
At the time, Dennis's apartment was on the ground floor, so he decided to hide Steven's body under the floorboards. It wasn't just about hiding evidence. He believed keeping the body nearby was a form of companionship. For months, no one
then it's gonna
suspected
stink
a
up.
thing. Soon, the urge returned. About a year later, Dennis took another life, and then he did it again and again. Over the next few years, he ended
the fuck?
multiple people. Most of
12?
the victims were young men he invited to his apartment. He would end them before they could leave, then hide their remains. He buried some in the garden and hid others under the floorboards. Dennis became an expert at disposing of
This would be
remains.
impossible
Then
to do
his landlord
nowadays,
ruined
can't lie.
everything for him. In 1981, Dennis's landlord told him to move out, so he moved to a smaller flat a few miles away. But the new place made hiding bodies much harder. It was on the top floor. That meant he couldn't bury his victims, so Dennis improvised. When he ended his victims, he put them into cupboards and drawers. It didn't take long for those places to fill up. Running out of options, Dennis made a
Wouldn't you
reckless choice.
smell that?
Dennis decided to flush them down the toilet. That was a terrible idea. The drains clogged almost immediately. Soon, the entire apartment building was filled with a foul stench. Frustrated neighbors
fuck?
hired a plumber to find out what was blocking the pipes. When the plumber saw what was inside the drain, he had to call the police.
And these police took these chunks of meat to a pathologist who confirmed that they were in fact pieces of human
Oh my
flesh.
Plumbers
god.
and police traced the source.
You
to
can't be
Dennis's
that
flat.
stupid.
I said to him, I'm here because your drains were blocked with human remains. And he said, oh my God, how awful.
He was arrested in February 1983. By that time, he already ended at least 16 people. At the trial, Dennis
16?
pleaded not guilty, claiming he had a mental defect. The jury didn't believe him.
Oh!
He was sentenced to life in prison. Dennis
Oh,
remained
okay.
behind bars
Thank God.
until May 2018. when
Yeah.
Dennis thought flushing remains down the
Yeah,
toilet
get
would
that
make them
thug.
disappear,
Get that
but
thug.
drains don't work that way. What you flush stays in the system. It builds
Oh
up.
my God, it's an
and
advertisement.
Eventually, someone finds it. The internet works the same way. When your personal information is online, it doesn't just vanish. Your address, your phone
Dude, the
number
way he
is spread
integrates his
across the
ads is
internet.
fucking
A few years
crazy.
Ago, someone found my personal information online and used it to threaten me and my family. That was the moment I realized how exposed we
pause
really are.
my screen.
It's because these data broker websites make money by selling your information. And what's crazy to me is that it is completely legal, but they're also legally required to remove your data if you request it. So I tried deleting my data online by myself, but there were just hundreds of these websites that had them, so I gave up. That's exactly how today's sponsor Aura can help.
Aura.
Websites have your information.
He gets mega sponsored by Aura. He gotta have his own partnership code, bro.
In just a few weeks, you'll notice less spam calls, less junk mail, and your information becomes way harder to find online. But Aura doesn't just stop at data removal. It monitors the dark web and alerts you if your data shows up there. So if someone tries to take out credit or open a bank account using your name, Aura will alert you right away. And in the worst case scenario, you're covered by up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. And because Aura protects you from every angle, they give you a VPN, antivirus software, and a password manager, which all help you stay safe online. If you guys want to try Aura, click the link in the description or head to aura.com/VV for a 14-day free trial. That gives Aura enough time to find out if your personal data
give
is
my man
being
money.
sold
He
online.
needs it.
Up next is a criminal who got caught because he couldn't help but brag about his crimes. Dennis Rader.
That's such a lame thing to
Most
flex
serial killers
about,
try
though.
to stay hidden. Dennis Rader did the opposite. He spent years sending messages to the police bragging about his crimes. In each message, he dared them to catch him.
Isn't that like a horror movie? Isn't that like a movie? Like
proved he was anything but that. In the 1960s,
thing?
Dennis Rader
I'm pretty sure a
worked
movie
as
did that too.
home security
Maybe it was based
technician.
after him.
He would go to different homes installing alarms and security systems. He seemed like a devoted father and husband. People were saying that he looked like a pillar of the community, but behind that image, Rader was hiding violent fantasies.
He just looks like a regular ass
acted on
dude.
them yet. That changed when Rader realized something disturbing. His job as a home security technician gave him direct access to people.
Yo, do not let murderers into the security protection role. Oh my
homes
god.
and to potential victims. As Rader moved from house to house, he picked out people he wanted to attack. He chose those who looked vulnerable and lived alone. Soon he had a list of targets. The first was a woman named Julie. One morning, Rader broke into her home. He expected her to be alone, but her husband and 2 kids were there too. Rader ended everyone. Before leaving, he cleaned everything that
You killed all 4 of them?
could be traced back to him, and he did a good job. When police arrived, they
Oh, he
found
had a
nothing
gun or something,
solid
right?
to go on. Months later, Rader went after the next person on his list. Once again, the police had no leads. Most people stay silent after getting away
Because,
with
like,
murder.
there's no way
Rader,
he killed them with,
that
like, a knife or
silence
something.
was unbearable. He wanted the world to know how smart he was, so he decided to introduce himself to the public. Months after his second crime, Rader mailed an anonymous letter to the police. In it, he claimed responsibility for the crimes. He also revealed the name he wanted to be known by, BTK. It stood for Bind, Torture,
Burger King
and
Tit
The media
King.
picked up the story. The BTK
Burger-
Strangler
burger-
became a
wow,
national
burger.
headline. Rader loved the attention, and it motivated him to resume his crime spree.
That is
Over
so
the next
stupid.
several years, he ended at least 10 people. After
What?
each crime, he mailed letters, poems, and puzzles to the police. He used fake return addresses so nothing could be traced
doesn't have
back to him.
fingerprint or anything,
Sometimes he
really.
described where the victims could be found. Other times, he dared the police to catch him, but they never could. Sometimes there was nothing else that the police could do except to wait for the next victim. Rader was obsessed with attention, and that obsession is what ruined him. By 2004, mailing letters no longer excited Rader. He wanted to go digital. Now he wanted to type letters on a computer, save them on floppy disks, and mail them to cops. A floppy disk was an early form of digital storage like a USB stick, but he wasn't sure if
What?
the police could trace where a disk came from. So he did something unbelievable. He asked them. He mailed one last letter and asked, "Can I communicate with floppy and not be traced to a computer? Be honest." He told them to reply through a newspaper ad, and they did.
The police responded in a newspaper ad saying that it was safe to use the floppy
Oh my
disk.
god, why
That
would they?
response was a lie. The truth is that a floppy disk can reveal exactly which computer it came from, but Rader believed them.
And he
What?
fell for it. He literally believed the police.
He mailed
Bro.
the disc. When investigators examined it, they found 2 key details. The file was created at an address in Wichita, Kansas, and it was made by someone named Dennis. Police tracked him down. In February 2005,
Oh my
Dennis
God,
Rader
bro.
was arrested
That's
near
what
his
it's
home.
for.
His trial became a media spectacle. Parts of it were even broadcast on TV. Millions watched as Rader calmly described his crimes.
When they came out of the house, I came in
and confronted the family, and then we went from there.
He was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms in prison. Dennis
Only
Rader
10?
is still serving that sentence. Up
Oh,
next is a
10
case where the
consecutive
criminal
life
fell
sentences.
in love with his
Oh.
victim,
Wait, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Bobby Joe Long. Everyone handles
Bobby
heartbreak
Joe.
differently, but when Bobby Joe Long's relationship ended, he snapped and innocent people ended up paying the price. Bobby's problems started long before he got his heart broken. As a child, he hit his head
Bobby Joe.
again and again.
Long had a lot of head trauma. He fell off a swing. He got a concussion. He fell off a pony and had a concussion.
Those injuries damaged part of his brain tied to judgment and behavior control. Because of that, Bobby struggled to tell right from wrong. Years later, a bad breakup pushed him over the edge. According to Bobby, the relationship ended in his 20s.
What is with guys like breaking up and then becoming murderers, bro?
Wrong in his life.
Like,
Eventually,
they
that
have-
hatred led to horrifying.
Whoa,
actions.
what's up, Andy?
In
How's it
1980,
going?
Bobby started
They just become
targeting women
murderers.
across Florida. His strategy was simple. He
They just
served
start killing
newspaper
people, bro.
ads for used items.
They go through one
particularly
divorce. They go through one divorce and they just start killing
bedroom
people.
Furniture. He contacted women
33.
Who were
How you doing,
selling furniture
Andy?
and arranged
How's
to
your day,
pick
bro?
it up at their homes. But when he arrived, he attacked them. This pattern continued for about 3 years. Then something forced him to change his approach. In 1983, one victim reported Bobby to the police. However, Bobby lied, claiming the encounter was consensual, and he managed to avoid jail. It was a close call. But Bobby
yeah,
didn't
it's
want to
consensual.
risk
Didn't
being
ask the other
reported
person.
again, so he vowed to never leave a victim alive. In 1984, Bobby's crimes escalated. He began abducting and ending people. Then he made the dumbest mistake that landed him behind bars. In November 1984, he abducted Lisa McVeigh.
I remember thinking of my
Lisa
family, my sister,
McVeigh.
my brothers. What are they gonna do without me?
At first, Lisa begged him
It's going. I'm excited for Wednesday. My delay is
to
long. I'm
free
not home
her.
right now.
That only made Bobby angrier, so she tried
See.
another approach. She listened to Bobby and asked questions almost like a therapist.
There was a moment we had a conversation. I had asked him, why was he doing this to me? He said, due to a recent breakup. he was getting back at
What are you
women in
doing
general.
right now?
Lisa realized her survival depended on gaining his trust. She told Bobby she understood him. She even offered to be his girlfriend.
Oh my god.
I can be your girlfriend. We don't have to tell anybody how we met. You seem like a pretty nice guy.
She promised to keep their relationship secret. They could live happily ever after. All he had to do was let her go. Somehow, Bobby believed her. He drove Lisa back toward her home. Along the way, he stopped at an ATM to withdraw cash. After 26 hours in captivity, Bobby released Lisa. As soon as he left, she ran straight to the police. Lisa reported everything she could remember. The make and model of
Getting
Bobby's
for
car,
Korean
the
fried
location
chicken?
of
Oh
the
shit, what type of
ATM,
freaking
and
fried
his
chicken? That's
physical
grocery stock?
description. With all
Shit,
that
that's fire.
information, it didn't take long for
That's fire.
investigators to find him. Bobby was arrested in November 1984. At first, he was only charged with Lisa's abduction, but when police searched his home, they found evidence linking him to other cases. Bobby confessed. He was sentenced to execution. That sentence was carried out in May 2019. This next chapter is about the criminal who got caught because he wanted a haircut. Earl
Bro,
Nelson.
he wanted to be
Earl
drippy.
Nelson ended
So he
multiple
got
people
caught?
and evaded
Oh
police
my
in 2
gosh.
countries. But in the end, it wasn't an
Andy would do this. He
investigation that
wanted to
caught
be
him. He was
drippy.
exposed
He would
as a
kill
killer
someone and
because
then he wanted to be
a haircut.
good old
Earl
barbecue
became
chicken
a
I was
criminal
getting. I
after an
see.
accident. When he was
No
10,
yang
he
yo.
was in a serious cycling
None of that
accident. He
yang
suffered
yo.
a severe head injury and slipped into a coma. When he woke up, something about him was different.
Earl was never the same after this. He had large gaps in his memory, and he suffered from severe headaches.
You could become
for the
a
rest of his life.
murderer?
Over the next few years, he became moody and unpredictable. But things were about to get worse. When Earl was 19, he fell off a ladder and got a second head injury. That second blow pushed him even further into madness. He began losing his grasp on sanity.
Earl started spending a lot of time in the basement, and he also started hearing voices.
His behavior frightened everyone around.
Why is that a thing? Like, you start to lose your mind and you just become like a murderer. Why is like an inherent thing in humans? It's like when you go insane, you start killing
His
people.
own family told him to leave their home. By his late 20s, Earl was isolated and consumed by violent thoughts. Then he snapped. Earl's first victim was a landlady named Clara Newman. In 1926, Earl visited her pretending to rent a room. As soon as she
I got
let
the
him
chicken I'll be
inside,
driving now,
he
but
ended her. When
yeah.
the police examined the scene, they found little evidence. They
have
thought it
a
was an
safe
isolated
drive, bro.
crime. But 2 weeks later, Earl ended another landlady, this time in San Jose, California. Just like before, he pretended he was searching for a place to rent. And when the landlady let him in, he he attacked. Panic spread across the community.
The brutal murders horrified residents, and a $1,500 reward was released, equivalent to $20,000 in 2015, in hopes that they could capture the unknown killer.
The newspapers even gave him a name, the Dark Strangler. Over the next few months,
like we gotta not make like murderers' names like so tough, bro. Because they gotta call we gotta call him like fucking loser or whatever. Because like if you get a fucking crazy cool name, they're gonna keep doing it, bro.
Multiple people across several states: Oregon, Iowa, Kansas, and Illinois. Earl traveled constantly. He used a rotation of fake names and false identities. He would arrive in a new town, attack someone, and leave before authorities could react. For nearly 16 months, he stayed one step ahead of the law. Then a haircut ruined everything. Earl had enough hair on his head for someone to grab and pull. Unfortunately for him, someone did. In June 1927, Earl tried to end someone in Canada, but his victim didn't go down without a fight. She scratched and clawed. She even tore out chunks of his hair, leaving wounds on his scalp. He managed to end her and escape, but his hair was a mess. The next day, Earl walked into a barber shop for a trim. The barber immediately noticed the scabs and bald patches.
His barber said that he had scabs and cuts all over his scalp, and he got really weird when the barber asked him about it.
The barber became suspicious and called the police. By that time, Earl already left the barber shop, but the barber provided a full description. Soon after, Canadian authorities issued a nationwide alert.
Get
5
him!
days later, an officer spotted Earl at a train station. He was arrested. By then, Earl ended at least 22 people. At his trial, his lawyers argued he was insane, but that defense didn't save him. Earl Nelson was given the death penalty. The execution was carried out in January
1928. That's so
long.
long.
Is a criminal who practically arrested
That's almost 100 years ago.
Arthur Shawcross. Everyone has habits, even serial killers. Arthur Shawcross had one of the worst habits a criminal could have. He loved revisiting the places where he committed his crimes, just to look around and admire his work. That dumb habit became the reason he was arrested. Even as a child, Arthur had a violent streak.
In school, the teachers characterized him as lazy.
You know, I'm saying like, oh, these killers are so dumb, bro. But like, you know, there's not a smart killer out there, I feel like.
And would bully.
Like, they're all like fucked up.
At 21, he joined the U.S. Army. He was sent to fight in Vietnam. Life at the war front gave him freedom to act on his violent impulses.
He claimed to have been a one-man patrol in Vietnam and that he killed 39 combatants.
When Arthur returned home, he reportedly experienced severe PTSD. He struggled to hold a job and developed an antisocial personality. Those issues influenced what he did next. In 1972, Arthur ended the lives of his first 2 victims, but he was sloppy. Witnesses saw him with one of the victims before the crime. He was arrested and sentenced to 25 years in prison. But halfway
and then he left prison and did it again?
Arthur applied for early release, and it was approved. Prison officials claimed he was no longer dangerous. It couldn't have been more wrong.
Prison didn't do much for Arthur's already troubled mind, and once he was
released, how did he get away with it right after again, man?
As soon as he was free, Arthur began hunting again. Over the next 2 years, he ended multiple women. Police knew they were dealing with a serial killer, but finding him wasn't easy. Arthur left no fingerprints and followed no clear pattern. However, he had one weakness. After every crime, Arthur returned to the scene to relive the attack.
Then he hit her body under a tree, went home. Then he said he returned several months later.
Months later is like whatever. Someone kept coming back to the crime scenes, so they made a simple plan. If they wanted to catch him, they just had to wait near one of his old crime scenes. In January 1990, police found another victim buried in a field. They believed the culprit would return to the site. So this time, they left it undisturbed and set up surveillance around the area. Then they waited. 2 days later, their patience paid off. Arthur drove back to the crime scene.
It was what the police had been waiting for. FBI profilers had highlighted the killer's pattern of returning to the dead bodies.
Arthur got out of his car and examined the burial site.
Shawcross returned to the bridge to make sure that the body was far enough under the bridge so we couldn't observe it.
He seemed almost proud of himself.
I guess I could say I was enjoying myself.
He had
Yeah, bro. That
No
you.
idea
Oh
he was
my
being watched.
god.
Eventually, officers moved in and arrested him. It was January 1990, just 2 years after his release from prison. By then, Arthur Shawcross already ended at least 14 people. At trial, his defense argued insanity. They claimed PTSD and childhood trauma caused his crimes. It didn't work. Arthur was found legally sane and sentenced to 250 years imprisonment. He passed away behind bars in 2000.
Just say a death sentence.
This next criminal got caught because he parked in the wrong spot. David Berkowitz.
Life in
For
prison.
most of his early life, David
prison.
Berkowitz felt unwanted. He was adopted as an infant, and he grew up wondering why his real parents gave him away. When he finally discovered the reason, he went crazy. When David turned 21, he tracked down his birth mother. She told him he was the result of an affair she had with a married man. In fact, both his biological parents were married to other people when he was born. And that's why they gave him away. That information triggered a psychological breakdown in David. He began to unravel. Around this time, he developed an interest in the occult. He became obsessed with devil worship and dark rituals. Soon after, he claimed he was hearing voices of demons in his head.
There were demon-esque things that were possessing him. He wasn't just himself.
By 1975, David lost touch with reality. And that's when
Schizophrenia
violence began.
is
David's
scary.
crime spree began in December in 1975. He attacked a random woman on the street. She survived and David escaped. But the voices of demons inside his head didn't stop. They demanded more. In July 1976, David fired a weapon at 2 young women sitting in a car. This time, one person lost their life. It was the first time he ended someone, but it wouldn't be his last. Over the next several months, he ended multiple people.
These guys, like, they kill once, bro.
By early
They go
1977,
fucking nuts.
detectives noticed a pattern.
The shooter had a specific type of victim who they preferred to target: women with long,
Probably
dark
looked like
hair.
his mother.
New York realized they weren't dealing with random violence. There was a serial killer on the loose. To catch him, police formed a 200-person task force.
200?
The crimes led to one of the biggest manhunts in the city's history.
Undercover officers patrolled neighborhoods. Detectives chased every possible lead. Still, they couldn't find anything.
But police still have nothing they'd be willing to describe as a hot lead in the case.
Meanwhile, the entire city was terrified. People stayed inside after dark. Stores lost money because customers were too afraid to go out at night. Women dyed their hair because they heard all the victims had long, dark hair. And through it all, David kept attacking. In 2 years, he ended 6 lives and injured several more. It seemed he would never stop. In July 1977,
Why does he
David
look happy
drove
in
to a
that photo,
neighborhood in
bro?
the Bronx.
Like he didn't do
hunting for
anything
his
wrong
next
while getting
victim.
arrested.
He found a couple sitting in their car and attacked them. The man survived, but the woman didn't. When David returned to his car immediately after the crime, he found a parking ticket on the windshield. He unknowingly parked too close to a fire hydrant. He didn't think much of it and drove away. Hours later, police arrived to investigate the crime. They questioned people in the area. One woman remembered seeing a strange man near a parked car.
Man come towards me and he looked me straight in the face. He looked at my door, and right here we crossed each other.
She believed he was the person
Damn,
responsible
Old English is
for
so
the tragedy
crazy.
that night.
I don't know, he was a killer.
Sounds so much
I don't
different.
know, he looked nice.
She also noticed the parking ticket on David's car. That made it easy for detectives to find him. They pulled every ticket issued in that area that night. Within hours, they found the car she described.
Registered David Berkowitz with an address in Yonkers.
Police brought David in for questioning. He confessed
Look at his
immediately.
smile.
David Berkowitz, 24 years old, a postal worker, walked out of his Yonkers apartment last night, turned the ignition key in his car, and found himself surrounded by police.
In court, David pleaded guilty. He received 6 consecutive life sentences. When the story hit the news, one detail stood out. This dangerous killer was caught because he parked in the wrong spot and got a parking ticket. Up next is a criminal who practically wrote down his crimes. Henry Landrew.
Whoa. Why would
Henry
he
Landrew
like in a
wasn't
book?
caught because of witnesses or a confession. He was caught because he loved to write. He wasn't writing stories or novels. He kept a diary to organize his life, and without
they found his
realizing it, he
diary?
wrote down the very
What?
details police
Aren't you
needed
supposed to keep that
arrest
thing
him.
hidden
In the
away?
late 1890s, Henry lived in Paris with his wife and 4 kids. But Henry couldn't keep a steady job, so he chose a different path. Crime. Henry didn't want to be violent, so he became a scammer. He pretended to be an engineer and inventor. He promised to design machines for paying clients. When orders came in, he disappeared with the cash. Police eventually caught him, and he was imprisoned for fraud. When Henry was released in 1909, he tried a new scam. This time he targeted rich elderly widows. He placed personal ads in newspapers looking for love. It was like Tinder in 1909 when
he made Tinder. Oh my gosh.
Henry chose those with money. He would date them, gain their trust, and run off with their savings.
He continues to place personal ads looking for women to meet, and more women fall into his trap.
This guy is not this handsome to be doing that.
Scam earned him a lot of money, but he didn't get the opportunity to enjoy his success. One heartbroken widow reported him for stealing her money. Henry was arrested again and sent back to prison. When he was released again in 1914, he had a new mindset.
Why doesn't he just do it once?
He figured if his victims were not alive, they couldn't report him. So Henry returned to his dating scam, except this time he planned to end every victim. Henry kept placing newspaper ads and meeting widows, but now the dates had a deadly ending. He invited women to his home outside the city. The only way to reach the house was by train. Henry bought round-trip tickets for himself.
We cannot. Why were they so desperate for love?
He never planned for them to return. When they reached his house, Henry ended them.
His only motive is money. Once he gets that, he disposes of the women as quickly as possible.
To destroy evidence, he burned their remains in his oven. He repeated this process for years. He dated them, stole their money, and ended them at his house.
Over the years, neighbors often see him walking into the house with women, but never see the women leave.
As the victims increased, Henry became wealthy. Soon, he had a new problem: accounting. He couldn't keep track of all his money, so Henry began writing everything.
I feel like there's a limit of threshold in money you need.
He recorded names, gifts, and train tickets in a small notebook. It helped him stay organized, but that notebook became the biggest mistake of his life. By 1917, Henry's notebook was packed with names. That same year, he met his next target, a woman named Celestine.
Oh, and then she found his book and was like, oh, these are the missing girls, and then brought it to the police.
Henry charmed her and took her money. Then he ended her at his home outside the city. When Celestine disappeared, her sister grew worried. She remembered Celestine dating a strange man before she vanished. She also remembered what Henry looked like. Years later, Celestine's sister spotted Henry on the street. She alerted a nearby officer, and Henry was arrested. When the police searched him, they found his notebook. It contained the names of many women, but they didn't understand what the names meant. Officers then searched his home. They found tiny bone fragments inside the oven. Remember, Henry burned the remains of his victims in that oven. Unfortunately, experts couldn't prove the bone fragments were human. It was 1919, and forensic science wasn't very advanced. The case went to trial. At first, it seemed Henry might walk free.
Landru and his defending counsel's main argument is that no bodies have been found, and that the bone fragments found in Landru's oven could have come from animals.
So investigators focused on Henry's notebook. They noticed a pattern. Henry always bought one-way tickets for the women and return tickets for himself. When they checked, those same women were reported missing. The notebook became the main piece of evidence. Henry was found guilty and sentenced to execution. After his execution, Henry's story spread worldwide. It inspired movies, books, and radio shows. More than a century later, people still consider him one of France's most notorious criminals. These killers spent years hiding in plain sight, but eventually their mask.
Why is sarcasm permanently yelling?
You can't fake being a good person forever. My friends, character isn't what you show people. It's who you are when no one is watching. Visual venture. Wait, before you guys go, make sure you guys watch my full-length deep dive about horrible internet crimes with insane twists. I talk about a dumb criminal who tattooed a crime scene.
Top 5 scary ghost to make you say go.